Cat and I Play Red. Today we're doing a Kickstarter preview for Factory 42 from Dragon Dawn Productions. Factory 42 launches on the 10th of this month. I'll put a link in the comments below. Make sure you check the campaign out. Factory 42 is a semi-cooperative worker placement. I'm not a fan of co-op games. The co-op element in this is pretty low. So if you're after a co-op game, it's not for you. Sorry, just the way it is. Enough talk about it. Let's have a look at the game. Right, so this is Factory 42. Bear in mind this is a prototype, so a lot of things are going to change between now and the finished version. However, all the artwork and stuff I think is finished, but the components will be different. So it's a worker placement game, like many other games, but there are quite a few differences here. We've got a supply sheet here that shows us the different goods that are available. We have materials, metal, food, and special goods. You'll notice the food, materials, and metals all have 3 different types in 3 different colours and in 3 different sizes. These are slightly smaller, these are slightly bigger, and slightly bigger still. I think that is going to be staying consistent, and as far as I'm aware, the metals are all going to be shiny metallic colours, which is quite exciting. Magic down the bottom here is a bit different. Magic is essentially a wild good and can be used to replace any other good. Coal, again, works in a slightly different way, but we'll look at that when we come to it. So, these are our goods. This is our player board and our main board here. Both the player board and the main board are double-sided. There's a basic version of this game and an advanced version. If you'll notice here, there's some extra stuff on the player board, and the same with the main board. I'm going to be showing you how to play the base game, and then I'll show you the components that make up the extra stuff for the advanced game. So, depending on the number of players, depends on the number of workers you start with. We're still playing 2-player here, so I actually start with all 7 available to me. The first thing we do in the round is stock the market for the round, and we're going to draw some government orders. Now, the number of these depends on the number of players. In a 2-player game, there are 2 orders available. Now, this is where the semi-cooperative element comes in. If these orders aren't completed by any of the players at the end of the round, players will get minus points for each order that wasn't fully completed. Let's have a look what it says on the top here. So, we're going to start with these goods in the common pool, as shown on the top of these orders. So, that is 2 copper, 1 marble, and 1 coal. And we're going to place these into what's called the common pool. Goods that are here are available for anyone to use and to take. More about that later, but that's what we start with. Then we're going to turn over an event card. There's a big deck of these, however the game's played over 6 rounds. We have 5 of these cards chosen at random, and the event for the 6th round is printed on the board. But let's have a look at this one. At the end of the round, each commissar is given a copper from the supply. But also into the common pool, we're going to put 1 marble. So, in that goes. So let's have a look at the worker placement spots. The first spot on the board is the requisition area. Players will place workers here. They'll get points to spend to put goods into the common pool, potentially get rosettes, and points to spend on goods that go into their personal supply. Bureaucracy is where the interesting part of the game happens. However, it just happens. There's no workers placed there and it always takes effect. So we'll come back and look at that when we do a round. Placement number 3 is where you load goods into the trucks. So you see these very nifty little rail carts here. Players will put carts on there, take goods from the common supply and put them into the carts. However, getting tricksy, number 4 is spiking. This is where your opponents can add other rubbish into your carts that you may or may not want. Number 5 is shipping. This is where you take goods from the carts and place it into one of the docks on your player board, hopefully with some goods in. Number 6 is steam production. You'll see this little cog symbol at several points in the game. To complete the government orders, you'll notice they need steam, and this is how you get it. Place workers here and you will burn resources that are available in the common pool, and you can potentially burn goods from your personal supply to get yourself some personal steam. Number 7 is trading. So here you can sell goods for the amount shown here to then buy goods that you need for the amount shown on the other side of the card. This card changes every round, so it's well worth keeping an eye on what the common values are, when it's a good time to sell some things, and when it's a good time to buy some things. After number 7, we then hop to the player board for number 8, which is research. Here you can develop a number of different improvements for yourself. So it might be increasing your storage as shown here, or building cranes or incinerators. After 8, we then go to the manufacturium number 1. So here you can fill government contracts from dock number 1 or your warehouses. Then we jump back to the main board for accounting. So there's various actions you can do here, 4 different actions in fact that are available. You can take any 2 of those actions as long as they're different actions. Then for part 11, we go back to the player board for your second manufacturium. This applies to dock number 2, and again you can use goods from your warehouse. Then we go to number 12, which is end of the round, some end of round scoring and cleanup. So let's have a look at these slots in a bit more detail. So let's place some workers and see what the spots do. So the first thing I need to complete any orders is obviously some resources. So I'm going to go to the requisition spot. All players will play their workers, then we'll action them. So I'm going to kind of go around and place. Can I get 1 worker on every spot to show you what they all do? Oh, look at that. Oh, just about. Right, so I've placed all my workers very conveniently on every spot on the board. Though I might move some of them in a bit. So, requisition. There are 6 spots players can go here, and it depends on what they get, what reward they get on what spot they're on. Here, I'm going to get 5 points to spend on the common pool. Now, looking at what's coming up, I need some metal. So, I have 5 points to spend. I'm actually going to go 1, 2 for wood, so that's 3, 4, 5, according to the chart shown at the bottom here. So, 5 points worth into the common pool. I then gain a rosette, which at the moment are represented by these red discs. And I then get 1 point to spend on myself, to treat myself to something nice. I'm going to go back to this metal. I'm going to take a steel and pop it in my teeny tiny warehouse. Right, now bureaucracy. This is where the game kicks off. So this happens every round. There's nowhere to put spaces. Tough, deal with it. The first player takes the resources from the common pool and drops them into the tower. Now, I'm being a bit careful here because, as I said, this is a prototype, so there may be some sellotape and goodwill involved in keeping this together. These are the cubes, resources from the common pool. I'm going to pop these into the top of the tower and see what comes out the bottom. So, oh gosh, that was a bit violent. So, this is now our common pool for the round. And as you can see, it's quite different to what it was when we started off. So, now on to phase 3, which is loading. I can select a rail car. Now, obviously, these are all empty as we're starting the game. However, there may be occasions that they're not always empty. I select a rail car, put it in the first available slot, and I can add between 1 and 4 resources from the common pool into that cart. So, I haven't actually got anything I want to complete these orders, which isn't very helpful. I'm going to take this. Now, I don't have the goods I want, so I'm going to have to use my market to try and get some. So what's worth a lot of the market? Copper is. So I'm going to take some copper. So these are the 4 resources I'm choosing, and I'm going to pop them in the cart. As illustrated on the board here, each cart can hold up to 6 goods. Next, we go to the spiking phase, and this is where it can get quite mean. So, the first player will draw 3 resources plus 1 for each worker on the spot. So in this case, it will be 4. So, I can now choose to put these into any of the carts that are on the board. So, obviously, it's only me that's going to pick this up, so it's not the end of the world. I'm going to pop that and that in there. Now, these resources, along with 1 lichen and 1 flax, will go back into the bag for potentially the next round of spiking. The shipping phase here, I can move this little cart onto my player board. So these goods are kind of mine. Then we go on to the steam generation phase. So anything that is left in the common pool that can burn will burn and produce steam. So, bearing in mind there's a lot of metal in here. Oh no, lichen burns. So, These are our burnable resources, as indicated by the flames shown here on the bottom of the supply sheet. There's also a handy little guide at the bottom here that tells you how much steam you get for each good. So I have 1 coal and 1 lichen, which is a total of 4 steam. So the steam marker will move up to 4, and this is the steam that's available to everyone for this round. If we ever get to a point where the steam hits 15, our chimney's basically going to blow, and we're going to drop all the way back down to 8 for the rest of the round. The chimney's being repaired, so you can't generate anything higher. It won't go higher than 8 until the next turn. So then let's go to the trading. As I was saying, I don't have the goods I need to complete any of the government orders right now. So I'm going to trade to get what I want. I am going to trade 5. Oh, don't know what I want to trade. I'm going to trade a lichen and a copper, which, according to this chart, gets me 5 for the copper and 3 for the lichen, so 8. So these go back into the supply. Then I choose what I want to spend those points on. I need wood to complete the government order. Wood is selling for 3, so I can afford 2 wood. 2 wood, yes, which I'm going to take. These must go into my warehouse. Any extra is always discarded. You can't get to swap stuff out in the warehouse. If you don't have room for it, you don't get it. Mean but harsh and true. So now we're going to go to the research phase. Oh look, Miraculous Meeple has appeared there. So I can choose to buy an expansion for 2 materials and 2 steam, large expansion for 3 materials and 3 steam. These are represented by the little pieces here, and just sit on your board and give you more space to store goods. I could choose to buy a crane. A crane will cost me 1 copper and 1 material, and is represented by these little tokens, which I just pop on the board, and that would allow me to unload from dock 1 and 2 to either of the manufacturums. The incinerator will let me burn goods to produce private steam that no one else can use. Over the course of the game, you can have all 4 of these improvements. However, in a turn, you can only build 1. So, I don't actually want to buy any just yet. So, then let's skip to number 9. So, this is where you're going to fulfill those government contracts. So, I can only use goods that are in dock 1 or in my warehouse. So, let's have a look at what those government orders need. It needs 1 steel, 1 wood, and 1 metal, which I'm going to use the other steel from my inventory. So, I'm going to pay these 3 goods to complete this contract. It also costs 1 steam, so I'm going to move that down on the main board. So I'm just going to leave my worker there for the time being. All contracts have 3 standards they can be fulfilled: the minimum, the standard, or the optimal. Obviously, the minimum costs you less, but you get less rewards. the standard costs you slightly more, give you some rewards, but the optimum is really where you're going to get the good stuff. So for this, I get 2 rosettes, which I'm just going to take and pop onto my board there. Then we go back to the main board for the accounting round. Now I can do 4 of these actions. What I'm actually going to do is spend some of these rosettes I've earned and swap them for points. So I'm going to exploit my fame and pay 2 rosettes to gain 3 points. My other action is going to be bribing the committee. I have this very tasty little beer here in my cart. Obviously the committee like beer and gold, don't we all? So I'm going to hand that one in, pop that in the supply for 1 point, and that's my 2 actions there. The Manufacturium 2 works in exactly the same way, but with carts that are in Dock 2. So there's a few extra squares you might have noticed on the board. Let's go and talk about them before we talk about the round end. Most of the spots on the board have got this little hexagon space. You can pop a worker here and it becomes a commissar for the round. The commissars have slightly different, more impressive abilities than the standard workers. So on the requisition, so here they'd get 2 points plus 2 points per worker to spend on the common pool. So if, for example, we had 2 workers here, that would be 6 to spend in the common pool. You'd also gain 1 rosette and get 1 point to spend per worker. On the loading section, the commissar, all workers must add 1 more resource to their cart. If 3 carts are shipped here, the commissar is going to gain a rosette. Spiking, this is where the spiking can get really mean. The commissar can add 4 resources into the spiking bag. So if people have got workers here, their chance of drawing rubbish that they don't want is actually much higher because of the commissar's action. And the commissar here for shipping. When you ship carts, you ship from the station here in purple. If there's a commissar on this spot, the commissar gets to choose one of the workers here who must take both of these carts. Over in trading, the commissar basically acts as a bit of a bouncer. Anyone who uses this space must give 1 rosette to the commissar in order to trade. The commissar himself, though, doesn't get to do any trading. The commissar in the accounting area also acts a bit like a bouncer. He demands that all workers here must pay him 1 resource before taking their action. No bribe, no actions. So these commissar spaces can be really powerful. Because of the current situation, we've only had the chance to play this at 2, so we haven't really fully explored the commissar actions. But with 3 or 4 players, it's going to be mean. So, if you notice on your player board, there's a commissar here, and there's extra spots on the Manufacturium. If you place a second worker here, they essentially act as a little alchemist and have a piece of magic, meaning you're going to pay 1 less to fulfill those contracts. That's the same on both of these spots. Now, it's also the same on the research spot. You're going to get a reduced cost from this magical commissar. However, you can also trade 2 rosettes for a point or for a magic cube. So, now I've shown you all the spots and the actions, let's go to the end of the round. At the end of the round, the first thing we do is return any empty carts from player's board to the railway station. So we can also move goods from the cart into our warehouse. Now, seeing as I only have this 1 good here, I'm going to pop that into my warehouse and move the cart back to be available. The next thing we're going to look at is the government orders. So, any player that has completed a government order will get 2 VP. So, here I am. I move my marker up 2 points. This order, however, wasn't completed, so all players are going to get -1 point. And yes, you did see that correctly. This score track goes to -15. Then, the player who has completed the most order will get a Hero of Labour reward, which will be 1 rosette, which again, I'll pop on my board. Then we're going to swap out the cards. So the market card is changed for the next round. This government order that wasn't completed has a rosette popped on it to make it more appealing for next round. And we restock back to 2 in our case. So we then take back all our workers and start the next round by looking at the next event card. At the end of the round, each commissaire must pay 1 resource to the common pool or lose a rosette. But we also refill the common pool from here, 1 beer, and from the government orders. So we have 2 wood, a marble and a coal that are going to go into this common pool. The game is played over 6 rounds. The 6th round has a slightly different event. All accounting costs an extra rosette for each worker you place in there. And also this space shows your endgame scoring. So you're going to get 1 point for each 3 rosettes you have. The player with the most resources will get 1 point. The player with the most improvements gets 1 point. Then these bottom 2 things here are actually to do with the advanced game, which we'll have a look at in a minute. So let's have a look at the tower and why it's so important. The tower is actually representative of the red tape that holds us all up in day-to-day life. So while these goods may be available in the common pool, bureaucracy determines they go into the tower. And as you'll see, not everything comes through. We're all held up by red tape now and then. So while we've got the camera up there, I'm going to pop some things in and see what happens. Hopefully this looks good. I don't know. Right, so you'll see some stay behind, some come out. There's a certain amount of resources that go in there at the start of the game. So you never quite know what you're going to have for the round, which is partly what makes this game interesting. You can plan as much as you like, but bureaucracy will determine what you are or aren't allowed to have, which can really mess up those orders. So let's flip the board over and have a look at the extra stuff. So here and on our player board, we have the Elven Embassy. This adds some extra cards that give you a one-off bonus. So these are those cards. And the Inventors Guild. Again, this adds some crazy creations. Slave cage you're making there. Machine, connections, official stamp. So there's a load more different things and machines that you can build using those cards. And again, you'll notice both those spots on the main board have a commissar space. So again, you'll go here and get the bonus. So in this case, you're going to pay rosettes to get magic, which is pretty awesome. But it does mean that you're not going to get to do the base action. So it's a constant balance between whether you want to go for the overpower play or the basic action that's going to get you the stuff you need to get your engine running. So that's Factory 42 from Dragon Dawn Productions. I know they've posted some pictures recently of the workers that they've got in place of these very standard meeples. They're very, very cool dwarves with pickaxes. I think they put that picture up on Twitter. Go and have a look. The Kickstarter launches on Saturday the 10th. Check it out. Don't be put off this game if you're not a fan of co-ops. The semi-cooperative element is really just completing those government orders to not get the negative points. But on the games we've played, I've found if you can get some of them, your points are going up. So even though you may lose a point, as long as your opponents are losing points, that's fine. I really enjoyed this, had a lot of fun. I think Rob found it a bit too random and was just constantly getting frustrated with the fact he didn't have the right goods for his orders. I really enjoyed the random play with the tower and the spiking. You need to plan. You need to plan a lot more than you'd think for what initially comes across as quite a small worker placement game. Check it out on Kickstarter. Hope you liked this video. If you did, click like, subscribe. Come and say hello to me on all the other socials, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's the other one, Twitter. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.